Well, this is an exciting one. We have been sponsored by Capcom to take a look at a few of their games, and we're also going to see how those run on the Switch too. But yeah, I think this is a genre you absolutely love, isn't it, Glenn?
Yeah, we're going to look at some of their classic fixed camera perspective, pre-rendered background era of games, namely the Onimusha series in terms of what's on the Switch / Switch 2 now, I suppose, and their older Resident Evil games, those kind of first couple that really encompass that style.
Now, as with any sponsored video, if you want to win a copy of Onimusha 2, then just leave your comments down below. Which is your favourite in the series, and are there any you would love to see come to Switch 1 or 2?
So we'll start with Onimusha 2 then. What exactly is it? Well, let's find out.
So Onimusha 2 originally released back on the PlayStation 2 back in 2002, and we now have a HD remaster with some modern graphics and controls that brings things up to date.
Yeah, we're going to start with this one, even though the first one is also on the Switch, because this released actually quite recently, just before the Switch 2 released, and it may have been lost in the excitement for that new console, and it's a game definitely worth talking about.
So as I say, they have updated the visuals. I'll talk about that side first, and then obviously Glenn has got the history of these games. He knows these inside and out. They've added in things like a gallery mode with 100 different sketches in there. There's a digital soundtrack. They also added in a new difficulty, which is interesting, called Hell Mode.
Yes, they did. And this is actually quite a difficult game off the bat anyway, so yeah, fair play to anyone that goes down that route.
Yeah, this one uses what's known as a dynamic combat system. It's essentially an action combat system, isn't it? Where you're slashing at enemies, trying to strafe around them, and then doing damage when you need to.
Yeah, so there are lots of links between this and Resident Evil that we'll get onto later. The series share a lot of concepts, but where they do differ is in the action, when you're referring to the earlier Resi games at least. And this does have that hack and slash feel to it. It's an action adventure game at heart, but you could almost describe it as survival horror in some respects, in terms of how careful you need to be with your health and making sure that you're keeping yourself alive, because you can get overwhelmed very easily.
I remember as a younger person playing this, and that feudal Japanese setting really was lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that sort of setting, and what they do with the Onimusha games is they take real life people and you know, like periods of time, and give it a supernatural twist.
Nice.
So here you've got Nobunaga Oda, who is one of the unifiers of Japan, and he's on that quest to do just that in this one, but he's been corrupted, and you have to take him down.
That's really cool. I think there are like multiple playable characters here as well. You've got Jubei as the main protagonist, is that correct? And then you've got 4 other allies that you can control at different times.
Yeah, so Jubei Yagyu is your main character, who his village is slaughtered by Nobunaga and his people, and you go on this quest for revenge, and you have the power of the Oni, and you can call upon that as the game goes on. But as you say, you are right, there are other characters that you'll meet. It's quite interesting how it deals with it, this game, because it almost has like an RPG side to it, where you'll meet these characters as you go along, and you need to build relationships with them by conversing or giving them gifts that they'll like, and you'll judge this by the things they say. There's a character that's into his alcohol from other countries, and you'll need to find bottles of whiskey and whatnot, or vodka, and give them to him. And by doing that, they'll then turn up later in the story where they otherwise wouldn't have done.
Yes, I seem to recall a boss fight you were on, and one of them rocked up and started helping you out.
Absolutely, and there was another one that was there but wasn't quite as helpful, because I guess I hadn't built that relationship with them.
It's really nice, actually. I love it when Capcom do stuff like that. You know, it's those quirky elements sometimes that you end up remembering. There are other gameplay improvements here, so things like being able to switch weapons seamlessly during the combat, obviously faster loading times on Switch 1, and then faster again on Switch 2, and it has an autosave feature.
It does. You can still save it the traditional way, but yes, the inclusion of that autosave feature is very much welcome.
Other visual changes include the ability to switch between 16:9 widescreen and 4:3 aspect ratio. I didn't realise that. And they've re-rendered those backgrounds.
Yeah, so the 4:3 aspect ratio would have been the classic way to play it, wouldn't it? So you can still have that should you wish.
They've also kept in the original Japanese voice acting, and it's the first time we've had that in a Western release, which is nice.
That's right. And what I do find quite interesting about this game is that the main character, so Jubei, as we mentioned earlier, he's modelled after a Japanese actor named Yusako Matsuda.
Okay.
A very famous Japanese actor whose profile has been used as inspiration for many characters in anime and what have you. But if you see a picture of him and of Jubei, you'll see the likeness. It's very cool.
Yeah, I like stuff like those. The little Easter eggs, aren't they?
Yeah,
almost?
for sure.
In terms of the franchise's success, the series has sold over 8.6 million units worldwide, which is is a pretty big number, isn't it?
Yeah, I did read, and I don't know if this is still the case, at one point it was the 10th most successful franchise from Capcom.
Wow, that really surprises me.
Yeah, you had ones higher up like a Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, but this holds its own for sure.
It's got a real following, isn't it?
It has.
And there's obviously quite a bit of hype as well from the fans with that upcoming title on the way. There's an instalment, Onimusha, Way of the Sword, which is slated for release in 2026.
Yeah, as well as that, as we mentioned briefly at the start, you do have the first Onimusha game on the Switch again, /Switch 2, Onimusha Warlords, which released, I think it was 2001, but the kind of development side of it went back earlier, as you would expect, into the kind of mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that one of the higher-ups at Capcom at the time had said that they wanted to make a ninja Resident Evil, which is where the concept came from, with the idea of having like this house full of traps.
Yeah, nice.
And it obviously evolved past that, but you can, as we've said already, you can see the DNA in there of Resi as well, you know?
Absolutely. So we're going to have a look at a few other Capcom titles very briefly, but that's the one that we're obviously sponsored to look at. There'll be links to all of that in the description, the top pinned comment.
Yeah, it's a very good game to play, and if you're one of the people, and I'm sure there are a lot, we just highlighted how Resi is one of the highest selling franchises that's played Resident Evil and is looking for something similar but new to them, of course, then this is a great alternative. Let's look at Resident Evil now then. We're not going to go through all the games because we're looking more at ones that are similar to this one, of course. In total, you have the original Resident Evil, of course. You have 2, you have Nemesis, which was the third game. You have 0, which was a prequel. And I suppose you have Code Veronica, albeit that one did start the transition away from pre-rendered backgrounds. But on the Switch, you have the remaster of the original and you have 0. So we're going to look at those 2.
That's a good choice, yeah. So what were the changes there? How did they look when they first released on Switch?
So the remaster of the remake of the original Resident Evil, in my opinion, is one of the best looking games of all time. I know that's quite a statement, but when you see the original, which was a great game, I love that original game, but when you saw the step up from that to the remake, which was on the GameCube initially, it blew my mind. As a young man, it blew my mind. It was one of those moments in gaming, and everyone will have it, and depending on your age, it will change what that moment was.
Yeah, of course.
Where you saw technology in the flesh, this is what can happen, and it played great. I really enjoyed it. It changed a few bits to the original, few tweaks to gameplay and whatnot. Fantastic game. Then they remastered it, and obviously that is the version that's on the Switch. And if you've never played it and you like Resident Evil, you owe it to yourself to play this game. It's one of my favourites. It looks amazing. You play as Jill or Chris, of course, with a few other characters being in there. Barry is in there. Rebecca is her name. Sorry, is the other character that's a support character.
Yeah.
Within that story, set in the Spencer Mansion, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on, and it's a fantastic game.
Fantastic. He clearly knows his stuff, doesn't he, this guy?
Yeah, I do. I love Resi. I love Resident Evil. I'd love to have 2. Yeah. I'd take the original 2 on the Switch. I'd certainly love the remake, but I'd take the original 2 as well. But then we had 0, which was, so when the GameCube was out, as I mentioned, this remake was on there, and as part of an exclusivity deal at the time, 0 was another game that came to the GameCube, as did 4, which some people might not realise. It actually released on the GameCube first, and then came to other consoles like the PS2 after. But 0 is the one we're going to talk about because it's similar in style. Yeah. It did change some things. You played as Rebecca this time with a convicted character, like he'd been convicted of crimes. Okay. And in the pandemonium that ensued on that night in Raccoon City, he'd escaped, basically. And these two end up teaming up. And you don't know a lot about his history, obviously, at the time. But you could switch between them on the fly.
Okay, I didn't
which
realise
was
that.
New to the series. And a lot of the puzzle solving revolved around doing just that. You had to move one character here, move the other one somewhere else, etc. So that was new. And it also did away with item boxes.
Really?
So obviously in the first few you had the item boxes where you stored your stuff you didn't want and you could get them back later. In this one you could put the stuff down on the floor without having to discard it. You just placed it down and at any point in the game you could go back and pick it back up.
That's a complete fundamental change, isn't it?
It's massive and it worked to a degree, and then there were other times where you were like, I wish I could just have an item box, because you had to go back and get it and bring it, but
remember where you put it.
Exactly right. But it was good to see them trying to innovate and change certain bits of it, And this is, I don't know if I mentioned 0, but it's a prequel to that first game, and I don't want to go too spoiler heavy, but it sets the first game up.
That's cool.
You know, it adds this new side story that then bleeds into the first game, which
Yeah.
was quite an interesting way of doing it.
It is really quite interesting. I love those pre-rendered backdrops. They look fantastic.
Maybe just to close, we'll just talk about some of the links between the two series, because at first glance, aside from the pre-rendered backgrounds and
Yeah.
the fixed camera perspectives, you might not see what else is there between them. But things like picking up herbs,
Yeah.
medicines, you know, to heal yourself is definitely a part of it.
Breaking containers to get stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All that sort of stuff. The little boxes that you'll find that have got items in. The general structure of how things work, you know, investigating a large mansion or building of some description and having to find keys for certain parts or orbs or something that opens a door that you didn't initially have, you know, and then backtracking and getting yourself in. Very similar in structure in that respect. Just a tonal shift in terms of one being more action-based and one having that survival horror hook, but they do share a lot more than you would expect at first glance.
Absolutely, yeah. The Capcom games always had that clear sense of progression. You know, you knew that when you saw that door, okay, I've got to go find out where that sword key is or what that thing is. And that's, like you say, across both of the games, they have that same DNA.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference early game is very much that in the Resi games, if you play them like me at least, you'll leave a lot of the zombies alive because you're worried about rationing your ammo. So you're trying to circumnavigate them and then maybe take them out later when you've got a bit more.
Yeah.
In Onimusha, it's just get in there and kill them sharpish. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So that's the biggest change. But, you know, they're both great franchises.
So that's it. We've had a little look at a couple of the different games from Capcom. We've seen Switch 1 and Switch 2 footage. They're running great, and I think that's across the board with Capcom. Not just because this is a sponsored video, their games do tend to run well.
Yeah. I mean, they're one of my favourite developers, and they always have been, and Resi is one of my favourite franchises, and Onimusha, as someone that didn't play them back in the day, has been a very pleasant surprise.
Let us know in the comments, as I said at the start, what is your favourite survival horror? Down in the comments. We'll be giving away a copy of Onimusha 2. There are links in the description and the top pinned comment. If you want to support us, click those, go check out the game and let them know that SwitchUp was a good place to sponsor.
Absolutely. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.